name is Mike Wallace. The cigarette is Philip Morris.
New Philip Morris, probably the best natural smoke you ever tasted, presents the Mike Wallace Interview.
Tonight we go after the story of a private detective who helps Confidential magazine pry into the lives of Hollywood stars. You see him behind me, he's Fred Otash, an ex-cop, now one of the highest paid private detectives in the United States. If you're curious to know the methods, the morality, and the economics of a detective who works with Confidential, if you'd like to hear his answer to the charge that Confidential is a smut sheet, and if you want to know what Fred Otash thinks personally of the 9 million people who read Confidential, we'll go after those stories in just a moment. My guests' opinions are not necessarily mine. The stations are my sponsors, Philip Morris Incorporated, but whether you agree or disagree, we feel that none will deny the right of these views to be broadcast. You know, this is the time of year when we Americans do most of our traveling, vacations, weekend excursions, even moving the family to new surroundings. If you're planning to travel and you're a smoker, I'd suggest that you carry your smokes this way. There are 2 good reasons why I personally get Philip Morris in this crush-proof box. First of all, my smokes stay firm and fresh from 1 through 20. In fact, the last cigarette is just as good as the first. And second, this crush-proof box helps preserve the taste. And of course, the taste of any cigarette is the most important reason for smoking. This tastes natural. Let me repeat. Philip Morris tastes natural. This particular blend has what I call a man's kind of mildness. There's no filter, no fooling, no artificial mildness in Philip Morris, because you see there's nothing between you and the tobacco itself. So make your next move Philip Morris. I think you'll find it's probably the best natural smoke you ever tasted. And now to our story. Private Detective Fred Otash is one of the chief investigators for Confidential magazine, which is now involved in the most lurid court trial in Hollywood history. Tonight we're going to try to find out about Fred Otash, his past and present, and why he works for Confidential, and what he thinks of other people who do. Fred, first of all, I'd like to reestablish the ground rules, or restate the ground rules which you and I have established before we went on the air. Number 1, no names of Hollywood actors or actresses will be mentioned during the next 25 minutes. Number 2, we are not going to be talking about the litigation, the trial that is now taking place in California, right?
Correct.
Time magazine, Fred, July 11th, 1955, called Confidential magazine Success in the Sewer. Last week, the New York Daily Mirror called Confidential's publisher, Bob Harrison, a scandalmonger. Yet, in effect, you work for him. As one of Confidential's chief investigators, how much are you paid for your job, Fred?
Well, Mike, I want to clarify something. I don't work for Confidential magazine.
You work for Hollywood Research Incorporated, correct?
I work for Hollywood Research Incorporated.
Which does business directly with and exclusively for Confidential.
Well, I don't think that's a very fair remark. The court hasn't established that as yet.
Well, you're not suggesting they work for somebody else.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that much about their business, whether they work for somebody else or not, or if they sell stories to anybody else. I would say that one of their main sources of business is Confidential magazine.
Let's put it this way, Fred. You are qualified to talk about the subject which I have been talking about up to now.
I'm qualified to talk about, yes.
All right. How much do you get paid for the work that you do for Confidential?
Well, the work I do for Hollywood Research, I would say 20, maybe 25,000 a year.
According to an article in the National Enquirer, August 18th, by John J. Miller, you masterminded the subpoena serving for Bob Harrison for the California trial. That, in effect, is true.
True.
You charged $25,000 for that?
No, I haven't submitted a bill as yet to Arthur Crowley, the lawyer for Hollywood Research, as yet. It'll be a sizable bill because we've done a lot of background investigation on various subjects that have been brought up in the court, and I had a whole army of men out serving subpoenas. So my bill may be that large.
But you haven't decided yet?
It'll probably be fairly close to that.
I understand your total income for the last couple of years has been about $100,000 a year as a private detective, right?
Well, That's fairly close. Of course, Mike, you have to realize I worked for about 100 law firms all over the world. And Hollywood Research is one of my very small accounts.
One of your very small accounts?
Yes, I would say.
Well, if you're going to make $25,000 odd, and your income is about $100,000 a year, it's a fair-sized account, but we won't argue about that. I think that we have more interesting stuff to talk about. Aside from the money, Fred, what other reason do you have for working for Confidential? What satisfaction, if any, do you get out of working for it?
I get no personal satisfaction. I have no axe to grind with anyone that's exposed in any expose magazine. I get an assignment to do a certain job, and I do a certain job.
Pure and simple, a job.
That's all.
No personal satisfaction whatsoever.
To me, it's a job. I look at it very objectively, and I try to determine if the facts and the items are true.
Well, that's what I'd like to know. What specifically do you do for Confidential?
Well, it all depends on the type of story that has to be verified, you see. I'll try to think of something real fast hypothetically. If some girl sells a story, she said that she dated a movie star that's married, and she said at the time that I was dating him, he and I were making a picture together on a certain movie lot, and his wife was in Europe. And we went to such and such a location, or he came to my apartment and spent a couple of evenings there with me. Well, in that order, one, we'd establish if he was making a picture at that time, if she was working on that picture, if his wife was in Europe, and we would try to verify with the neighbors or friends or associates if they ever saw him leaving and entering her apartment.
In other words, you just want the facts.
That's right, the true facts.
Last March, Fred, you testified in California before a state legislative committee, the Kraft Committee, about how you investigated a certain film actress and a man who is now married to her. Remember?
I recall.
According to a New York newspaper, you testified that your men, and these are the newspaper's words, quote, used cameras with telephoto lenses and special equipment for taking photographs in the dark, and neither the actress nor her boyfriend knew they were being observed, end quote. Correct?
Well, here we are, we're talking about expose magazines.
We're naming no
names.
names.
That's wrong, yeah, but that's wrong. The newspapers have a tendency to slant a story to their advantage. Well, anyway, that's not true. Number one, we didn't take the pictures at night. The pictures were taken, and they were taken from a hill that overlooked this home. And they were taken with some of the equipment that I own. They were taken with a telephoto lens. And,
all right, so essentially the story is true. They were unaware of the pictures.
That's right.
All I want to ask is, how do you justify invading people's privacy like that?
Well, I feel this way. If you can see it or hear it, you're not invading any privacy.
Now, are you taking the Fred Otash point of view?
This is my point of view. I am a detective. I'm licensed and bonded to the state of California. And being a detective, we work many divorce cases, which are in effect the same as this particular situation you were talking about, you see. So when I wanted to verify if this item is true, I look at it just as if I'm working a divorce case to see if a man or woman are committing adultery either on his wife or she on her husband, you see.
So as far as you're concerned, again, it's just a job and you don't feel that it's an invasion of privacy? Let's say that, let's talk about, not about legality here, Fred, but about morality. When a thing like that is done, for the reasons that you do it, when you take intimate pictures with long-distance lenses, when you deal with informers, as you have said that you do, how do you square that with yourself, I'm talking now, with just plain human decency, Fred?
Well, that's a pretty hard question to answer. I look at a thing through a different set of eyes, probably, Mike, than you would, or maybe a reader. Being a private detective is a dirty job. There's no two ways about it, because you're always delving into the life of an individual, whether he is accused of being a thief or accused of committing adultery or whatever the charge may be. And being in this business, and I've been in this business as an investigator about 15 years, including time on the police department, I just take it in stride. Now, there are certain type of cases I prefer working. Now, I don't prefer working for the Hollywood Research. That isn't what I would call a case that I could go home with, go home at night and feel completely relaxed like I have done someone some good.
Yes, but you'll take any case that pays you money. Is that not so?
Well, certainly.
Any case at all.
Well, no, not any case. Now, I won't take a case for a member of the Communist Party or a communist. I sort of draw the line there.
I see. But aside from a member of the Communist Party or that kind of a case, you'll take any case at all. Let me ask, and again, this is a purely personal question, not a legal but a moral question to you, Fred Otash. You say, I gather, that you do not develop these stories. You just check the facts on these stories.
That's correct.
What do you think of the people who are directly responsible for these stories? The call girls, the spurned lovers, the paid informers who do supply the information for the articles. Do you think that they are not just a little bit contemptible?
Well, I think they're kiss and tellers, and I don't think anyone basically likes a kiss and teller, Mike.
So you don't have any respect for them?
I don't have too much respect for any form of informer, and I think that any police officer in the United States will say that the person that they disrespect the most would be an informer.
Well, then how in the world do you square... I can't understand. You don't feel dirty yourself dealing with these people?
Well, I don't deal necessarily with the informer, Mike. I may deal with people who have witnessed certain things, you see, like that particular story you and I were talking about prior to that. These two individuals had been noted by neighbors, you see. Well, you can't very well say a neighbor is an informer because they give a statement pertaining to certain situations that existed, you see. But I mean, I think you're talking about a professional informer. Now, as far as prostitutes are concerned, I'd like to go into that a minute. And I say this in all honesty, and I have no rights to grant, and I'm not protecting confidential, nor, believe me, I'm not, because to me, as I say, they're just an account. I have dealt with very, very few prostitutes pertaining to my verification of items for Hollywood research.
What's that again?
I have dealt with very, very few prostitutes pertaining to verification of items for Hollywood research.
You've never informed yourself?
No, I never have, no. If I did, I'd be in jail.
You'd be in jail for informing?
Certainly. If I ever violated the confidence of a client, number one, I lose
Well, I'm
my
not talking about in clients. Now, wait just a second.
You mean my personal life?
Yes, for instance,
no.
you've admitted publicly, Fred, that you kept company with a certain film actress during 1954. Subsequently, Confidential published a story about that girl. Would you be prepared, Fred, to swear in a court of law that you never furnished Confidential or anyone else with affidavits or material for any story about her?
I have already, in front of the Kraft Committee, and I'm prepared to in front of the court that's in session right now.
So you don't really think much of informing?
I personally wouldn't do it. No, I wouldn't do it.
Fred, these stories that are published in Confidential, what can they possibly do except hurt, embarrass, possibly destroy the lives of the people who are written about?
I wish we could mention names, but we're not going to.
That's
because
correct.
We decided not to. But Mike, I have very many good friends in the movie industry that are actors and actresses. And I would like to say this in all honesty, that they enjoy the items that are written about them, and I could, after
When you say they, you mean they all enjoy?
The movie stars enjoy. Now, the only time an expose item will hurt a movie star is if he or she are sexual deviants. That's when they will be hurt, because 99% of the people in the United States look down upon that type of person. But if they're normal, healthy, thinking people, a man who goes out and dates a woman, or a woman who goes out and dates a man, and whatever they do together is not abnormal, and it's not looked down upon by the people in the United States.
It is not looked down?
No.
That is your understanding, at least?
Well, I think that's a general understanding of the average American citizen that has a healthy mind.
What's that again?
I think that's a normal understanding of the average American citizen that has a healthy mind.
But a married man or a married woman who indulges in extramarital affairs and it is brought out to the public. Wait a second. Yeah. But the average American says, well, it's a normal, healthy manifestation and it doesn't do any harm. You believe that?
No, I didn't say married people. I said all the items that are written about.
Well, certainly your Confidential writes about a lot of married people, Fred.
Well, Mike, there's a lot of adultery committed in the world.
What has that got to do with the question that I put?
Well, I mean, the adultery is sort of a common thing in the United States, Mike.
Therefore?
Well, therefore, I see nothing bad about...
Do you see anything bad about adultery?
No, I don't. I don't see too bad about adultery. I think more people would commit it if the opportunity was available, or if they had the nerve to.
Well, this is your code. Ed Sullivan, Fred, wrote the following in his syndicated column on August 19th of this year. He said, TV networks are in a terrific tailspin over the Hollywood mess, which is smearing everyone named. Automatically, everyone named becomes a controversial case seriously affecting employment. Now, he seems to feel that it can hurt people's careers. That's diametrically opposed to what you suggest.
Well, I wonder if... I'm not going to question Mr. Sullivan's opinion. I think he's a very pretty man. But I wonder if he's talked to movie stars themselves.
I dare say that Ed Sullivan talks to movie stars from time to time. He didn't make this up out of the whole cloth.
Well, I think we talked to two different type of movie stars then. As I say, I know many of them personally.
Well, I think that you've said a good deal when you say that possibly you've talked to two different kinds of movie stars.
That could be.
As George Murphy pointed out, when we talked to him this week, he's been married for 31 years, has 2 children. He's president of the Motion Picture Industry Council. He said to us, Hollywood is no less moral than any other community. You always hear about the same few names involved in scandal, but you'll see more big stars at a Parent Teachers Association meeting at the Beverly Hills Grammar School than in nightclubs or theaters. You think that's a fairly accurate statement by George Murphy?
It's fairly accurate in this respect. I don't blame Hollywood or the people in the movie industry for the things that go on in Hollywood. We have to remember that Hollywood is a melting pot of the United States. And every pretty girl who wins a beauty contest or a handsome boy who wins an award for doing a play in school all come out to Hollywood to get that big break. Now, they get there and they find out that it just isn't that easy to get into the movie industry. And the jobs aren't as easy to get in other fields out there. So they, in a sense, and I mean this very seriously, they in a sense are determined that they are going to get close to either an actor or an actress. And this is their code and this is the way they operate, and some succeed and some don't.
Do you believe really that an actor or an actress without talent is going to be able to barter his or her morals for a job in pictures and stay in pictures on that basis, Fred?
I'm not saying that they succeed in becoming stars, but the temptation of having beautiful women available to the movie stars and handsome men available to the movie actresses are very common out there. So therefore, it's easier for someone who is a movie star to get involved with a very handsome man or a very pretty girl because they are available, and these kids make themselves available to them, and it is a great temptation.
Fred, you have, to some extent anyway, presented a defense of your work and the machinery behind Confidential, but there's something we haven't really explored yet, and that is the readership of scandal magazines. I mentioned before, well, let's say, no, I didn't mention before. I interviewed you last week, as you remember, for a newspaper column, correct?
Correct.
And for the record, with a recording machine in full view, you said the following about Confidential. You said, a magazine of this type must have a lot of appeal to the public. It sells 3 to 4 million copies. That's proof that people in the United States are scandal-minded, and they want to read this kind of junk, so they go out and buy this kind of magazine. There is a demand for it. You said that, right?
Yes.
In a moment, I'd like to know why you called the articles in Confidential junk, and I'd like to know your personal opinion of the scandal-minded people who read it.
Right.
And we'll get the answer to that question in just 1 minute.
Something's new here, but it isn't the melody. That's a grand old classic. It's the piano that's new. They just moved it in. There's something else new here, too. Philip Morris. You'll know the minute you smoke Philip Morris. Try 'em and see. Philip Morris tastes natural, and people who try it like it. They also like the man's kind of mildness in Philip Morris. No filter, no fooling. Nothing artificial between you and the tobacco itself. The box is crush-proof. Keeps your cigarettes firm and fresh from first to last. Smoked a Philip Morris lately? Get with it. Natural taste, man's kind of mildness, crush-proof box. Get with Philip Morris, probably the best natural smoke you ever tasted.
Get with Philip Morris in regular pack or crush-proof box, probably the best natural smoke you ever tasted. Now then, Fred Otash, last week, speaking about Confidential, you said it sells 3 to 4 million copies. That's proof that people in the United States are scandal-minded and they want to read this kind of junk, so they go out and buy this kind of magazine. Now, why do you call these articles junk?
Well, when I say junk, I don't necessarily mean Confidential. I mean any expose magazine. And junk is more or less a common word with me. I personally don't read expose magazines. I read the Reader's Digest and things of that type, which I enjoy reading. So that's my opinion. To me, this is the type of magazine that I personally am not interested in reading.
I get you.
I don't buy it.
In your book, it's junk.
Well, that's my opinion. You see.
All right. Now, you said Confidential is bought by 3 million people who are scandal-minded. It's read by an estimated 9 million people. I've heard that you estimate that 20 million people read Confidential each issue. Therefore, 20 million people, or 9 million people, depending upon your figures, are interested in reading this kind of junk. What do you personally think of these scandal-minded people, the people who read Confidential?
Well, number one, they sell 4 million. And they have about 20 million readers, I think, that's the average. When I say junk, I mean this, and what I think of the people. The newspapers have made a big play of this thing. Must have had 50 reporters call me and say, Fred, give us something we can use, something that's got sex in it, and something that's different, and something that's this and something that's that. They want something to expose. Even the papers are this way. They're making a big play out of this trial. They're not printing the true facts of the trial. They're printing a slanted story. Now, this is what the people want to read. They've proven that to me by saying, well,
this we understand.
Yeah.
What do you think of the people who read it? You say you don't. What do you think of those who do? That's all I want to know.
Well, I have no opinion of the people who read it. There is a market for this type of magazine.
Okay. All right. You have no opinion.
No.
You said it. Now let's find out just a little bit more about Fred Otash before we finish. Last night here in New York, you were on the Barry Gray radio show. You said that a man has to have a clean record to get a license to be a private detective, correct?
Correct.
From 1945 to 55, you were a member of the Los Angeles Police Force.
Correct.
Is it or is it not true that on or about April 19th, 1948, you were suspended for 60 days for neglect of duty and general unfitness for associating with people of questionable character?
No, that's not true. I was suspended. That's very funny.
What?
I told you about that before, but no, that's not true. I was suspended for watching some very big businessmen and friends of mine shooting dice. And I was...
Were you shooting dice along with them?
Can I take the Fifth Amendment? Anyway...
were you in uniform when you were shooting dice with them?
I was in uniform. Anyway, I was watching them shoot dice. And the game got raided by the Vice Squad. We have a very fine Vice Squad in Los Angeles.
I know.
And they got raided. And I was tried in front of a police trial board, and I was found guilty of neglect of duty. In other words, I should have put these men in jail for shooting dice.
All right. Is it not true that in July and in December of 1954, 6 years later, you were charged with neglect of duty, and that before a police board of inquiry could rule on your case, you resigned?
That's not true. That is not true. Your investigators did a bad job.
If I were to say the word supermarket to you, would that refresh your memory?
Well, I was not suspended, and I was not under any investigation. I did a TV show.
Were you charged with neglect of duty? I didn't say you were suspended.
No, I was never charged with anything.
You weren't. Would you say, whatever you may say about your record as a police officer, do you think the Los Angeles Police Department was sorry to see you go?
I don't know. I have a lot of friends on the Los Angeles Police Department. I don't think they would have sorry to see me go.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
I understand that in certain circles in Los Angeles, as a policeman, you earned yourself the title Gestapo Otash. How come?
Well, I used to give those commies a bad time when I walked the beat down in Pershing Square.
What do you mean by a bad time?
Well, we have certain laws that are in the book about speech making, inciting riots, and certain sections in which you're allowed to gather and make a give a speech and allowed to gather and listen, and I took advantage of those sections in the code, and I broke up these various conferences and talks.
Possibly?
If necessary, I did.
Bat a few heads?
No, I've never done that. Well, I have batted a few heads, but not particularly on this kind of a situation.
All right. I understand then why Gestapo Otash.
And the people who called me Gestapo was the Daily Worker in the People's World, communist newspapers.
Gotcha. Right now you share an apartment with a member of the Los Angeles Police Department?
I did.
You did? You don't any longer? Did he ever supply you with information for your work?
Not at any time.
Have you ever paid any policeman for information on a confidential story or any other story?
Never at any time.
Have you, Fred, ever had any telephone conversation with another private detective about getting information out of the files of a California state legislative hearing into the activities of private detectives?
Have I ever had, would you repeat that for a moment?
Have you ever had any telephone conversation, we just got about 30 seconds, with another private detective about getting information out of the files of a California state legislative hearing into the activities of private detectives?
Nope. But
Are you aware that a Los Angeles newspaper man claims to have a recording of that conversation?
well, if he has it, I think he should produce it. That's all I have to say.
Fred, I thank you for coming 3,000 miles to talk to us tonight, to explain a little bit about your job and what goes on with it.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
Men like Fred Otash and Bob Harrison have been accused of peddling scandal at the expense of others, and they have borne the brunt of attacks from the press, the clergy, and private citizens. But whatever we may think of Fred Otash, good or bad, must also apply in some measure at least to the 9 million, or he says 20 million Americans who keep him in business by reading Confidential magazine. The interview's over, and right now is when I enjoy a cigarette the most. And Philip Morris, with its natural taste and man's kind of mildness, suits me fine. I think that any smoker who tries them will find the same thing. Philip Morris is probably the best natural smoke you ever tasted. By the way, with a big weekend coming up, you may be planning a trip. If so, I suggest that you take along Philip Morris in this crush-proof box. You'll find that your smokes stay fresh and firm from first to last. Get with Philip Morris soon. I think you'll like him. Next week, we go after the story of an 88-year-old rebel who's been hailed by some as the greatest architect of the 20th century and damned by others for his scathing criticism of organized Christianity, capitalism, and American culture and morals. You see him behind me, he's Frank Lloyd Wright, a revolutionary in his life as well as in his art. If you're curious to know what plans Mr. Wright now has for his mile-high skyscraper, as well as the dream house that he's been asked to plan for Marilyn Monroe, if you'd like to hear what he thinks of the average man and of certain extraordinary men like Charlie Chaplin and Douglas MacArthur, and if you want to know how Frank Lloyd Wright answers the charge that he is, quote, a pompous windbag, unquote, we'll go after these stories next Sunday. Till then, for Philip Morris, Mike Wallace, good night.
The Mike Wallace interview is brought to you by Philip Morris Incorporated, the Quality House.
Enjoy Lawrence Welk's Top Tunes, New Talent tomorrow night on ABC Television Network.